morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you here to our webinar this morning, Formulas 101. This is part 2. If you didn't get a chance to see part 1, feel free to drop us a email on it and we'll get you a copy of the link so that you can look at what we covered in the first part. My name's BJ Yoder. I am with the tech support here at AllMax. And what we're going to do today is we're going to continue our talk on formulas, being what formulas are, how they work inside the program. I'm going to give you some examples of some specific formulas that we can use and things that you can look at from that standpoint. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and get into the program and get started. Feel free at the end of the session today, if you have questions or you have questions on specific types of formulas that we can do inside the program or anything that we've covered today or in the last video, feel free to drop us an email. There'll be a questionnaire at the end just to verify that everything's okay and you're happy with it and so on and so forth. But we are here to help you. We will also cover some things that are coming out in the future. But for right now, we'll just go ahead and get started. Formula section. To get into the formulas, like I mentioned the last time, the ideal way is to go in through location parameters. You create a parameter that you're going to want a formula attached to, for example, detention times is an example of one that we can put in here. And you can access the formulas from this area as well. Another way of getting formulas is by going in the menu item up here at the top and clicking on formulas. This here brings you to the formulas that you have defined. Just a refresher, when you create formulas, make sure that when you do create a formula that you're doing them in the correct order, okay? So what I'm saying about that is formulas on how they are calculated inside the program allows you to go in and it starts at the first formula created and moves right down the list and runs them in that order. So if you need a formula that is calculating flow, for example, maybe you're taking a totalizer reading and you're calculating the flow totalizer, the flow value based on that totalizer reading. Well, you're going to want that formula first in your list before you go and create one that's going to be pounds based on that flow. To look at the calculating order, all you have to do is in the formula section, there's a calc order button up here at the top. What this does is this brings up a list, and this is the order in which formulas are calculated. So to move things up and down in the list, all you have to do is click on it and you can go up and down where you want it in the list. If by some chance you are doing formulas, let's say you run your calculate and you have to run like 2, maybe 3 times to get all your results, that tells you that the calculation order is out of whack. So what you may want to do at that point is come into the calc order and just verify how things are going, see if you see any that are out of whack or out of order in which way you're wanting to do things. Had a client once that they were having to calculate 5 times. And so we went through their list, and just by looking at how things and what they named the formulas, I was able to decipher that they had flows out of place. They had some pounds formulas out of place, so that when they ran the calculation, when it got down to like MCRT and FM ratios, the pounds for BOD were being calculated after the FM ratio calculation. So we just had to adjust them, move them around to get them right. So keep that in mind if you do see that you're having to do them frequently. One of the things that I always like to do when I'm setting up formulas and I'm doing formulas is I kind of like when I create the location parameters and stuff, I'm kind of writing the formulas, trying to create those in the order in which I would need them. So it kind of helps me keep stuff keeps them in track, in line with how we're wanting to do them. So keep that in mind when you are looking at formulas and you're going through from that standpoint. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to go through and I'm going to give you some examples of how to write a few formulas so that you have some idea of some possibilities of ways things can work in formulas. So when we go and we create new, we hit the new button up here at the top. What this will do is this brings up our formula editor. Again, just like I said, if you have multiple facilities, you can actually pick what facility it's going to. Most of you probably have single facilities, so it's not as big of an issue. But you're going to go and you're giving it a name of some sort. And this is if you're saving the formula. I'm not going to save the formula at this time. I'm going to go and just write the formula, so I'm not going to really give it a name. I'm also not going to attach it to an LP at this time. This would be attaching it to the location parameter that you want the result to. And just like we talked about in the last session, when you go in and you create a location parameter and you access the formulas from that direction, when you save it and go back out, it'll already be attached to that location parameter. So it's not something that we really have to worry about. Now, one of the things that I always, and I'm going to stress it here as well, is when writing formulas, one of the things that we're going to want to do is use functions if possible. Functions are a way of doing shortcuts in formulas to make things, well, just work better altogether. So one of the way to look at functions is by going into the formula help. Now, when we go into formula help, one of the things I want to show you here are some shortcuts that we have. First of all, we have the ability of looking at all different types of functions. So if we're looking at daily functions, we can go into daily functions. This gives you examples of functions that we can use to do different things, such as a daily average, for example. But the other thing that I want to look at is location parameter data values up here at the top. And this is accessed in the help file, and this is where this comes into play because there's things you can do based on location parameters if you write the formula a certain way, which saves you having to write a whole bunch of things. So if under location parameter, it gives you a whole list of special characters and things that you're looking at. If you're using the process section of the program, it does give you some ways of looking at tank volumes and things along that lines as well. But one of the things that I really want to show you down here is if you go and if the parameter is at. So if we go and we put an at sign in front of the parameter, what this will allow you to do is it gives you the ability, it'll return the pounds for it if there's a flow at that location. So it makes it a little bit easier to, you don't have to write out the entire pounds formula if you don't want to. But these are some shortcuts that you have in here. So if you use a double at sign, the loading for that is named, and it's again just different ways to try different things. I personally, I like to go ahead and just write them out because I used to use a lot of those shortcuts, and one of the reasons I don't is because I got clients going, well, what does this mean? How does it calculate the pounds? So I have a tendency to go and just going ahead and writing the pounds formulas out just so that we have it completely done. Um, that way, if anybody looks at it, they know how that formula is how it's being calculated. But always look at these functions and look at the different types so that we can go in and see what we're looking at and maybe make your writing of formulas a lot easier. Okay, so one of the first ones that I'm going to show you here is this is one where I run across a lot. In fact, I just ran across it today, is where I had a client that what they wanted was they wanted a percent removal. But what they wanted was the percent removal based on the monthly averages. Okay. So when we create a parameter, we're going to call it percent removal. We'll just use BOD for example. The normal formula for that is in minus out divided by n times 100. That's our normal percent removal formula. But one of the things that they were wanting to do was they were wanting to use the monthly average. Okay, so they wanted to see the monthly average BOD for the influent, monthly average BOD for the effluent. So this is where our function comes into play. Okay, so we go back into our formula help here and I go to monthly data functions. One of the things we have is a monthly average. All right. So what this does is this allows us to go and pick a location parameter, and based on types of offsets, this is the X, Y, Z, and W, for example, it lets us, by setting those individual things, will tell us what we're looking at. Okay. So if we come in here and we do M average, we pick the location parameter, and X is the offset of months. All right. So if it's the current month, it would be 0. Then what we do is we look at what type of average are we doing? Are we doing a monthly average? So basically it takes all the data for the month and does an average on those values. If so, that would be 0. Now, if we're wanting to do a weekly average, in other words, a 7-day average, that Y would be a number 1. Okay. Or if we're looking at hourly data, we can go and do a number 2. So it would take all the hourly data for that location parameter. So if we're using a 7-day average, so Z would be what week are we using? What are we looking at? Are we looking at a continuous average or a Saturday rule, Wednesday rule, etc.? These are the choices that you have here. Um, and then what type of average is it? So if we're using a regular arithmetic mean average, then you would use 0. If you're using a geometric mean, so let's say we're doing a monthly average on vehicles, we would want to use a geometric mean. So at that point, we would use a 1. All right. So, and then of course we can do a float weighted average as well based on what we're doing. So we're going to go and we're going to use the monthly average, and we're going to use it basically our defaults. So we're going to look at it for a 30-day average. We're going to look at it as just a standard average, so it would be 0 as well, and it'd be an arithmetic mean average. So that's what we would be looking for. So to do that, all we're going to do is you have the ability, you can pick it from the list here. Okay, so if you pick it from the list, what it means then is you just have to fill things in. So if we come in here and I go monthly average, there it is. This is my offsets, and it puts everything in there I did. All I have to do now at this point is go and change the location parameter. So we're looking at our formula, in minus out divided by n, and we're going to do it for BOD. So what I would do is bring up the location list. We're going to filter for BOD, and I'm going to go and we're going to find the influent BOD right here. So now what this will do is this takes the monthly average for my test period, which we're doing it in February because this is where I have separate data. This gives me what my monthly average is for that, for the influent BOD. So in minus out, and we can grab the same thing. Let's see here, where's that? And we'll change it. So then we're going to go and we're going to grab the effluent BOD. All right. And this is our effluent BOD. At this point, what it does is this. This gives us the in minus out. Now, at this point, you could type all this information in, so the m underscore average, open parenthesis, location parameter, et cetera, et cetera. Reminder, if you're doing a location parameter, always pick it from the location parameter list. Don't type it in there. I've done it before where I've typed it in, and I thought I typed it in right, and I'm transposed 2 letters. So of course the formula didn't work because it wasn't seeing a valid location parameter. So now we have our in minus out. So if you look at this, one of the things that's neat, and I can't remember if I showed you this last time or not, but to give you an idea, if you want to verify some information on what it is here and what kind of values you're getting, what you can do is you can highlight and select a given information. So in this case here, I want to look at my monthly average for influent BOD for the month of February, okay? So if I grab all that data and I go and I hit the exclamation point down here, what it'll do is say selected text, and this is what our answer or value is. In this case, 118.535714, whatever. It's a long number. Because one thing to remember is inside our program, when we go and we run calculations, and we actually save things 15 digits out. So that's why you're getting that big of a number. But that is the average of what that is. So basically 118, 119. So if I go and I look at this and I grab the effluent, same way, and I hit the exclamation point, it's 2.55. So in other words, 2.6 is what that value is. So when I go and I select all of it, it gives me the result of what I just did. In minus out is 115. So basically 116. So this is our in minus out. So when we write the formula, again, this is how we do it. We want this done first. So we would go and we would put this in, we would parenthesize all that. So that gets done first. So we're doing that. So then in minus out divided by in. Now, I'm not going to go and select all that again. I can select the in stuff here for the influent BOD. I can copy it and I can paste it in. So in minus out divided by in, there's our formula. It comes out to 0.978. Well, we want it in percentage. So again, we can take that and multiply it times 100. That gives us the entire thing, and it'll give us 97.8. All right, pretty straightforward formula, and you can do this on any of them. So you could do this on BOD, you could do it on CSS. The format is the same because we are using the in minus out divided by in. Now, when we go and we create this formula, if we're putting it in and we're wanting to see it on the data view, if we attach this formula right now to a location parameter and we ran the formula, you would see that result on every single day for the month, which isn't really what you want to see, okay? So if we want to take this formula, we can go one step further with it. So we want to take this formula here and we want to write it on the last day of the month. Now, one of the reasons why, how I like to do things, if I'm doing a monthly formula, so I want to see one value for the month, I always write it on the last day of the month. And the reason being I do that is there's two reasons. Number one, when I'm looking at data, so I'm looking at the influent BOD, I'm looking at the effluent BOD. If I write the result of this formula to the first of the month, I'm getting a value and I don't even have all my values for the month. So I always like to put it on the last day of the month because then visually it looks, oh, it's the last day, so I'm using everything for the month. Just, I don't know. To me, it just makes it a little bit nicer from that standpoint, makes it easy. So to write this result on the end of the last day of the month, what we're going to do is we're going to use what's called an if-then statement. And again, we can go into the formula help. We can look at functions by alphabetical. We can go to I, and this is an if-then statement. So if this is true, then I want to do this, else I do that. That's basically how if-then statement works. Okay, and it gives us that capability of being able to go and determine what we want to do in that if-then statement. So with that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to start it out. We're going to go if, open parentheses. Now what we want to do is we want to write this on the last day of the month. So what we do is we have a function that is called DOM, open parentheses, 0 and do. So basically if the day of month, that's what DOM means, the current day of month is equal to, can you guess? LOM, or length of month. So if this is true, if this here is true, so in other words, if the day of the month that I'm looking at is the same as the length of the month, then what I want to do is I want to do the formula else, so we put a parenthesis at the beginning, we put a parenthesis at the end of the function. So if I do that, if it is not, so in other words, if the current day of the month is not equal to the length of the month, so in this case in February of 22, it would have been the 28th. So if it's not the 28th, then what I want to do is I want to not put anything in there. So in other words, I just type blank. So on the 28th, so if the day of the month that I'm running, when I run calculate, it goes down through there and it sees it's on the 28th. Oh, it's the 28th. So it is equal to the length of the month. So then I'm going to run our percent removal formula. If it's not the 28th, I'm just going to leave it blank. So this is what this formula does. So if it's the 28th, and it is, because I have in my example here, I'm looking at a date of the 28th. So if this is true, so if I highlight all that and I hit this here, that means I'm getting a 1, which 1 is yes in computer programming language. 1 is yes. Then, since it's true, then I run this formula. If it wasn't true, so in other words, if I change this date here and I change it back to the 27th, just because, then I run this again. Whoops, I did selected text. I run the entire formula again. I don't get a result. And the reason being is because of this first thing here, this first function that we're doing. Because if the day of month is equal to the length of month, and if we test that, it's going to be 0, which means no, it's not. And since it's not, we skip the formula itself and we go straight to the end, which is by typing in the word blank, that means exactly what it means. It means you don't put anything in there. Okay. So the idea being is that this allows us to go and write a formula that allows it to be put on the last day of the month. This is an example of this, okay? Now, we can do other things as well, okay? There is other ways of doing the exact same thing, all right? So let's say, for example, we want, instead of a monthly average, we want to see the weekly average, for example, and we want it written on the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th, okay? So that means I'm just wanting a value written on those days. How can we do that? Well, now we can get a little bit more tricky in the formula itself. Okay, so we have that one there. So what we can do now is we can still do an if-then statement. Okay, and in this here, and again, we're going to go back to our functions here. We're going to go back into the I. There is what is called a int, integer value, okay? So this is something, this is when you'll see this int, you'll understand where I'm putting this in, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a formula that looks at the integer value of if it's divided by 7, okay? Then if those are divided by 7, so it's the days divided by 7, then it'll work, and is equal to the integer of it, then the formula works. So we can go in, and I'm going to use LP for the example and not an actual location parameter, just giving you an idea. So if the day of month, and again, we're going to go with the current day of month, is divided by 7, and it's equal to the integer of day of month divided by 7. So basically what we're saying here is if they're divided by 7, if the day of months are divided by 7, and it's, so in other words, if it's 7, 14, 21, 28 is basically what we're getting here, okay? If we do that, Then we can go, and if that's true, then we can go week underscore average. We can use the weekly average function, which is similar to the monthly. It's just a little bit different where we don't ask for as much information this way. We just get, we don't have 4 things we have to look at. We just have to look at one. So if the location parameter, that's LP. I'm just doing it so we can write the formula easy. And again, you would select the LPs from the location parameter list. If it is, and we do comma 0, and then we do comma, we're doing something else to get what that value is, we then go and end up with a value, else we leave it blank. Okay, so that formula there is basically, it's telling us if it's divided by 7 and my weekly average is I'm taking the day of month and dividing it by 7, then I can get a result, and I can do an average result from that standpoint. Okay, so this is a version of a formula that would give you a weekly average value on 7, 14, 21, and 28. And again, you attach it to an LP. That is where those date values would be based on that day of month information. Okay, so you can use the day of month, and the reason why I'm showing this is because you can use the day of the month and length of month to get where you want values to be. Okay. And again, it's a little bit more complex formula. You can also, and I'll just show you another example of that. We can actually do that exact same formula. Long waves, I showed you the short way. This is the short way. The long way of that formula is the exact same thing. This is, we're looking at each one of them as a period. So if the day of month is 7, I do this, else if the day of month is equal to 14th, I do the formula again. If the day of month is equal to 21, do the formula, 28, do the formula, or I leave it blank. So what we're doing here is we're putting if-then statements within if-then statements. Is how the long version is. It's just been a bunch of if-then statements that we put together. So we actually, instead of doing blank at the end like we did on the other one, it would just be another if-then statement until we get to the last one. Then of course it would be blank. The one nice thing about our formula editor, if you forget something, so in this case, if I don't have enough parentheses in there, it will tell me that I don't have enough parentheses. So we can go in and we can add those back in, and it allows us to see it. So this is taking that simple formula I wrote, and this makes it a longer formula, but it still works the exact same way. Okay. Now, another formula that we can do is if I'm wanting to go, I don't want, let's say for example, I don't want a value. Let's say we're using that dmeter function. So the dmeter function is, that I showed you last time, is writing a formula that takes a meter reading and converts it to flow, for example. Now, we can write that formula very simple. Where's that? We can write that simple formula, which is a dmeter, and this here is the the location parameter of the meter, the totalizer. This is our daily offset. This is our max meter reading, so we can put in our max meter reading. And let's say this is a offset of 1, so in other words, it writes it to yesterday, is what the result is, and a multiplier. So I can go and multiply it times 0.001. Right? This formula here would go and take that totalizer reading and convert it to flow based on your multiplier. Now, here's the problem. And this is where we can run into some problems. Let's say, for example, you get a new flow meter. All right, plain and simple. You get a new flow meter. And so now, and it's in the middle, it hasn't turned over, so it's not at zero. The old one isn't at zero. So we're going to start out, the last meter reading you had was 5,750. And the new meter reading is zero. Well, we know we subtract that out, we're not going to end up with this huge flow value, which is wrong. So you have to correct that. Now, correcting that flow value is not simply done just via formula. But what you can do is you can make it and you can manually correct that result, but it doesn't affect anything from there on. And if you recalculate, it doesn't mess it up. So if I'm wanting to do something like that, it would be the same thing. So we're going to go and I don't think I even have one in here, but what we're going to do is we're going to create a formula if, and we're going to go is data, another type that would help, is data. So if there is data for, we're going to go for the flow, the effluent flow, just for the heck of it. If there is flow, if there is data, oh, let's change that. Actually, I want to do that a different way. If it is blank, so if the effluent flow is blank, then what I want to do is I want to do the flow meter. I want to do the formula. Else, again, this is our if then statement. If it's this, I want to do this, else I do that. What I want to do then is I want to go and if it isn't blank, if it is blank, I want to do that. If it's not blank, then what I want to do is I want to leave the value that's there. That's basically what I've written here. This will allow you to go and create a demeter that allows you to, a formula that will allow you to create the formula. It'll calculate the flow. It will go through and it'll let that flow information be there. But if I go in and I manually change the value because it was real huge, and again, like I said, we had a new flow meter put in, and so that value is not correct. I correct that value and I run calculate, it's not going to matter because it's not going to overwrite with the wrong value because there is a value there. The only way that this demeter will work, this formula here will work, is if the result location parameter, if it is blank. That's how that's going to work. If it's not blank, then it's just going to leave what's there. That's what that does. Okay. Again, the idea is just to make it so it's a little bit easier from the standpoint of being able to go and have data, being able to fix those from that standpoint. Okay. Now, the other things that you can do as well, I mean, again, the idea here is just to give you some ideas. This is another function. We have several clients, and for example, we've seen stuff where we want to see the 95th percentile for the last 12 months. I want to know what the 95th percentile is. Okay, to write that formula manually and put it out, it's going to be kind of a headache. But again, what we can do is we can use one of the functions. And again, this is where your formulas come into play. And we have AMPCT. This is our monthly percentile. Okay. And I want to look at it for the last 12 months. So every month I want to see what the 95th percentile is. All right. We can do that same thing with the if then. If the day of month is equal to the length of month, we can put it in there. But the other thing that's nice about it is by using this function, I can do some additional things. All right. Now, one of the things that this allows us to do is we can go in and it says it's for 4 things. We have the X is the offset, the Y is the type, just like we have in the other averages. The average is a mean here. We can do some other things here. But then one of the things that we can do is we can specify, there's an additional one that's not shown, that we can specify for the number of months. All right, so I want to see it for the last 12 months. So how that formula would work is M underscore PCT, which is percentile, which is that function we just looked at. And again, we're going to grab it for an LP just because and again, you would replace this with your actual LPs that you're using. So I go minus, comma, minus 11. So I'm going to go back 11 months. All right. And then our delimiters is just going to be standard average, but then I'm going to add the additional and I'm going to put 12. So what this does is I go back in time 11 months from the beginning of this month. I go back 11 months. So let's say it was December, just to make it easier on my brain. So we're doing this for December. So what would happen is it would go back to January. It would take all that data. Oops, I forgot one in here. Excuse me. It would take all that data and it would go through January through December, because we're doing it for 12 months. Go back 11, which is January. We go take all that data through December for 12 months, and it would give us the 95th percentile value of that data, of all that data. So you could get a percentile formula. Again, if we're only wanting to see this on the end of the month, the last day of the month, we have this is where we can do it. And if we only want to see it maybe we only want to see it in December. So if the current day a month is equal to I have to look, I think it is LOM, length of LOY, I mean. Nope, that's the wrong one. Date functions, here we go. Length of year, LOY. So what we can do then is we can do, if the day of month is equal to the length of year, then I can do the percentile formula, else I leave it blank. That value there will show on the last day of the year. That's the only place that'll show. The idea is you don't have to have everything on every day to go and see all those formulas, all right? And it just makes things a little bit easier, allows you to go in and give you that extra functions. Always look at the functions because it does work out fairly well, okay? And again, key things, look at your function help, all right? This will allow you to go and grab that information. You're grabbing the correct things. Blank is always means blank, that's what it is. Now, if, for example, let's say I go and I do an if-then statement. So if and again, we're just going to grab if the location parameter, we're going to just grab ammonia, for example. Well, we'll grab BOD. If BOD is less than 2, for example, then what I want to do is, if that's result, and I'm putting this, again, I'm writing this to another location parameter. If the BOD is less than 2, then what I want to do is I want to put out of range or something like, I want to put in some text, okay? So maybe we want to put below MDL, for example, as the text. So what we would do is we would go and we would use an alpha. Okay, we can't just put the text in there because we got to explain what that text is. So if we go here and we go below MDL, else we leave the value. Okay, so what this will do is, again, where's my, so what we would do is we would just put this here. So I want the result. So if it's below MDL, then I get it. And if you look at my test on the 28th, so if we look at the 28th and we check it here, we have a 1.87 is the value. So when I run I test the entire formula, it returns below MDL, all because of this alpha information. All right. So that's something that you can do as well, is you can have the formula return text. You are limited to the amount of text you're going to see. I believe it is 10 characters, 10, 12 characters, 10 or 15 characters. I'm not for sure on that. But you can put that text in there. The idea, but to put text, you're always going to have to put alpha and put it in parentheses what you're wanting it to return. That's why that says below MDL, because on the 28th it was 1.87. But the idea here is that's just another function that you can add in, another way of adding additional data, okay? Formulas can also be written and you can save it and not attach them to a location parameter. So for example, you can go and write a formula that is used at the bottom of a data view, for example. Okay, so by doing that, it allows you to go and attach it to the formula section on a data view, and you can put it there. Maybe you write a formula just so you have it, and you write it generically so that you can use it on your DMR. So it returns a value on the DMR. Again, there's functions from that standpoint. We've got, if I remember right, it's the state of Colorado, I believe. They have a median value that they have to write. So what they do is and it's on several different values, location parameters. So what they do is in the DMR setup, they create a formula that is for the median value. Now, reminder from last week, if we use the tilde, a little squiggly mark here, in place of the L and or the P, that goes and it'll, whatever it's attached to will be, that's where that will. So if I attach that to the effluent BOD, that would say effluent BOD in there and it would give us the median value. Okay. So by doing it this way, in the DMR setup, you're able to go in and select what formula is used. You could pick this formula and whatever location parameter you're attaching it to, it would use this formula and it would give the median value. All right. So there are options on how you use it, not just attaching stuff to location parameters. All right. So we want to make sure that, again, I'm just going to kind of give you a refresher here. Always use this formula help. I still use it. I've been doing formulas for 30 years with AllMax. I still look at the formula help because to me, there's so many examples of how I can do things, how I can grab different information and be able to write it. The formula writing, just so you know, it works the same in the wastewater program, the water program, or the Synexus program. Formulas are done the exact same way. Maybe different information, but it is done the exact same way. And it allows you to go and look at it. So this just gives you some interesting things. I'm going to throw a formula in here because this is just one of the crazy ones that I had. Basically, the client wanted to accumulate values for a year starting July 1st through June 30th and then restarting. And this formula only uses one location parameter for this whole thing. And I don't really want to explain it to you because it's really, but I want to show you how crazy you can get with some of your formulas. This one here, for example, does what I was telling you. Is it accumulates the values for a year starting on July 1st and then to June 30th, and then it starts all over on July 1st again. This is the formula. Like I said, it is kind of a long, crazy formula. um, but it does work. It took me a while to figure this one out to make it work correctly. But again, the idea is don't be afraid to try anything because as you can see here, you can do just about anything if you ask for it and it will explain. Okay. Uh, one other thing to remember if you are wanting a value for the day for a given location parameter in your formulas, you don't have to specify the day. All you have to do is pick the location parameter. So if we just go in here and we pick, again, we're going to go BOD. If I pick the BOD, that is the value for the day that you do on the test. So in this case, I'm doing the 28th. The value is 1.87. Now, if I go in here again, simple formula, times 8.34 times my flow for that exact same day. Again, just by grabbing flow, there is our simple pounds formula. And it looks at it, so the flow for that given day is 3.614. All right. So it gives you the capability of putting formulas in here that allows you to do it. Now, one of the things that I usually get asked, well, when I do this result, and you can see here, I do this result, I get a 56.363. I want to round it to 1 decimal. I only need to go one past. Well, we have a function. Again, we'll go back to our formula help. A lot of times I do it by alphabetically and I just go up here to the R. We have a round section, okay? What the round does is basically what it is. We're going to say what that value, how many decimal places it should be, is how that works. So in other words, so if I take this and I go ROUND, open parenthesis, and I do comma 1 and close parenthesis, that just rounded it down to 1 decimal places. So it would show in the database as 56.4. If I want it 2 decimal places, I can change it to 2. If I don't want any, I can just put 0. It just rounds it to the whole number at that point. That's another option when you are doing functions, you are doing formulas, that allows you to go in and see that information and be able to put that information in. Okay. So we've covered formulas, how they work. Again, look at the formula help. If you have questions on a formula, let's say you're wanting to create a formula that does something really wacky for some reason, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to the support team, send an email out, get on our website, go there and grab it that way. And then go in, and that will allow you to go and send us what the formula is and say, hey, I'm needing help for a formula that does this. A lot of times all we have to do is we just write the formula and we put LP in place of the actual location parameter so you know what those are. And you can attach the formula to a location parameter. Another thing is we can always connect up with you. And we can walk you through the process of creating that formula if you need help for it. If you've written a formula and it just doesn't work, you're going, I'm not getting the value I'm expecting, do the same thing. Let us know. We'll help you with it. Okay. So that's our formula for today. I mean, that's what we're going to cover for formulas today. Now, what I do want to do is I do want to explain some stuff that's coming out in Operator 10, some things that we're working on right now. What we are working on in our development is we are working on a, not sure what we're going to call it yet, but basically it's a mobile platform for entering data into the program. What it'll be is it'll be a form that you will set up, and you will create what location parameters you want to put on this form. You will save it, and based what it does is it allows you to go and it'd be a mobile feature is what we're doing. It would upload that list to a cloud. Then on any browser that you have, so if you're using an iPad or an Android or whatever, anything that has a Windows browser, an internet browser, you would be able to log in, pick the form, fill in your information. Once you put that information in, then you save it, and it'll resync back to the database with a sync feature that takes place. That is something that we're working on right now. We're probably going to have that out by the end of the year is what our goal is. And so something that if you are interested, feel free, please drop us a line, drop us a message on it, an email on it, and say, hey, interested in the Operator 10 mobile. That way we can get it out to you once we get it going. We can get you set up with it pretty quick. And it'll be based on users on how the mobile will actually work. Another thing that we have that we've released already, and we're releasing it now, is our Antero mobile. If you do have Antero with us, our preventive maintenance program, we do have a mobile feature that we are releasing that will allow work orders to be sent up to the cloud. Once they're put to the cloud section, on any web browser device, you'll be able to open up the work orders. They'll be able to complete the work orders, and then they will be synced back in a review status and go from there. Very nice, very easy way of doing work orders so you don't have to print them out. That's kind of what we're doing with the Operator 10 mobile as well. It gives you an easy way of entering data. So if you need more information on that or anything like that, feel free to drop us an email, and we will get with you and we will give you more in-depth as we get the documentation put together for it, for the Operator 10 mobile. The Antero mobile, we can get you that right away and get you started on that right away. Again, thank you for coming today. If you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out. If you're wanting some more in-depth training, whether it's on-site or online, feel free to contact us. Some states we do have contact hours available for on-site training, so feel free to, again, let us know if there's anything you need from us. Contact us and we will be more than happy to help. Again, thank you for coming today. Appreciate it, and we hope you have a great day. Thank you.